22 spins in 21 races. That is perhaps the worst statistic an F1 driver could ever have. There was no doubt that Nikita Mazepin was the worst Formula 1 driver we'd seen in quite a long time. Not just 0 wins, 0 poles, and 0 podiums, but also 0 points in his entire career, finishing 21st and last in a championship with 20 cars in his only season of the sport. So just how did Mazepin become infamous for being F1's worst ever driver, and where did he go next? Nikita Mazepin calls Russia his home country, and is the son of Russian oligarch Dmitry Mazepin. Now, to know how this story fully plays out, you do need to know a little bit about Dmitry Mazepin. In the world of Formula 1, rich dads tend to get a rep as a bit of a bad guy. For example, we've all seen how Lawrence Stroll is basically the Bond villain of the F1 world. However, in the world full stop, Dmitry Mazepin is a bad guy. He's owned many businesses in Russia throughout his life, most recently the Uralchem and Uralkali companies, which are chemical and fertilizer manufacturers. However, not only was he a businessman, but he was also in the inner circle of Vladimir Putin himself. You know, only one of the most powerful dictators in the world, and currently responsible for quite a controversial war. But more on that later. Dmitry's son Nikita was no businessman though. He was well and truly a man of racing, and began karting internationally at age 11. It's believed he began his international career after winning the Russian karting championship the year before, although I wasn't able to completely verify that on any trustworthy sites. Nevertheless, the first part of his career came with very little success. Between 2010 and 2014, Nikita was unable to secure any championships, and instead actually placed low in the ranks of most of them. Out of the 24 karting series listed on his Wikipedia, Mazepin finished outside the top 20 in 9 of them. Of course, there is always the possibility that he didn't compete in all of the races during a season, as many drivers do choose to swap and change between them and miss a couple races. What did matter was that at the end of 2014, Mazepin secured his best result in a championship yet, finishing second in the FIA World Karting Championship to a driver called something like Lando Norris, and this would be what allowed him to pursue a further career in motorsport. He began his open-wheeler racing career in the MRF Formula 2000 series, and eventually, after moving around through different championships, he would find himself competing in GP3, which at the time was the Formula 3 equivalent. Now, before we go any further, I would like to bring your attention to quite an alarming stat. Between 2015 and the aforementioned 2018 GP3 entry, Mazepin took only 1 win and 6 other podiums. It was already a sign that we weren't necessarily looking at the next prodigy rising through the ranks. Then again, in GP3, Nikita would prove me wrong, where his 8 podiums and 4 wins gave him second in the GP3 championship, behind series winner Antoine Hubert. Although some of Mazepin's iconic skilled driving was still present during this good run of form. 2019 then allowed Mazepin his first crack at Formula 2, and 0 podiums, 0 poles, and well, actually 11 points tells you about how well that went. Also, you can have this clip for extra context.
To sneak around. Oh, there we go.
And he's clipped Mazepin.
Surprisingly, Mazepin was allowed another crack at Formula 2, and even more surprisingly, he actually managed to improve. At least he's crashing into the 2nd place board now. So this time round, he took 6 podiums and 2 wins, which gave him an overall finish of 5th in the Formula 2 standings. And very surprisingly, a drive in Formula 1. That gets less surprising when you remember just how full of money Nikita's dad's pockets are, and just how absolutely desperate for that money the Haas Haas F1 team were. Now, once in Formula 1, things went probably as you'd expect if you've been paying attention to the video. Mazepin wasn't spectacular. He wasn't even average. He was straight up atrocious. Not only were his on-track actions deplorable, and he couldn't even make it round 3 corners of his first Grand Prix, but he also found himself in controversy before his F1 career could even begin. In the December before making his F1 debut, Nikita Mazepin posted a video to his Instagram story, where he appeared to non-consensually touch a woman repeatedly. So before the cars even had a chance to arrive in Bahrain, Haas found itself apologizing for Nikita's actions. Despite this, he made it to the grid, and well, into the rest of the year, all of this happened. And I think that makes it evident how he earned the nickname Mazespin. The funniest thing is, Haas was so desperate for that money that Nikita wasn't even dropped from F1 because of his lack of skill on the track. In fact, it was all to do with global politics. Despite missing the last race of the season due to COVID-19, Mazepin was set to start the 2022 season with Haas yet again. But then his dad's mate, Putin, decided to invade Ukraine. The start of this war obviously had huge global repercussions and caused hardship for millions of people. For the sake of this channel being a silly F1 channel though, we're just gonna stick to talking about what's relevant to the story of Mazepin. Nikita's family tree became a little bit of an obstacle to him during this time. As Dmitry Mazepin had ties with Putin, both him and Nikita by associate were placed on the EU, UK's and Canada's sanction list, and he was therefore unable to compete in Formula 1, as he simply couldn't travel to those regions. So that was it. As quick as it had started, Mazepin's career had ended, and he was out of Formula 1. So where did he go and what did he do next? First up was Rally Raid. Nikita apparently loved this form of motorsport, so given F1 was no longer an option, he went for it. He first sat a test with Dakar rally winning team Kamaz Master, and then began training with a former Dakar winner named Sergei Karyakin. And apparently Nikita picked up this style of driving almost immediately. Despite his lack of previous practice, he was a natural at spotting the racing lines within the dunes. And he was able to prove this when he competed in Russia's Silkway Rally Raid event, which had previous winners such as Carlos Sainz Sr. And Nikita managed to score a win in the T3 category during leg 7 of the rally. A pretty good showing for one of his first events. After that, he wouldn't be able to enter much more rally raids, aside from the 2024 Denis Davidov Baja, where again he was competitive and actually finished as the runner-up in his category. Nikita's done more than just rallying in his recent years though. He's also been taking part in the Asian Le Mans series in both 2023 and 2024. Where he's taken 5 podiums, 2 poles, and even 2 wins, with the video that's actually playing right now on your screen being him fighting for the lead. Is the grid actually that competitive? Well, the 2 former F1 drivers I could find were Paul di Resta and Will Stevens, who've both competed alongside Mazepin. But it looks like many European Le Mans Series drivers and GT drivers give this Asian Le Mans Series a go too, where Nikita and his teammates have managed to finish 4th in the championship 2 years running, although he's almost certainly still been up to some of his old tricks. The thing with Nikita is he's been fighting more than just battles on track, and more than just battles to push his opponents into the wall. He's actually been fighting to get back into Formula 1. After his dismissal from F1, Nikita founded the We Compete as One Foundation to help athletes whose fathers are mates with war criminals. Wait, hang on, that's not right. Ah, here it is. To help athletes who are excluded non-sporting decisions. Mazepin would fight against the sanctions placed on him, but after challenging the UK to suspend his sanctions so he could go meet with F1 teams, he was denied. The EU, however, would partially lift the sanctions against Mazepin, so he would be allowed to travel to the EU purely for motorsport purposes. And then his sanctions from the EU were actually fully lifted, as they determined Nikita was only related to his father through family ties and no longer through business ties, as he wasn't sponsoring Haas anymore. So while it does seem Nikita has a few more options to give a go, he can no longer really be backed by his dad's sponsorship money. The thing I'm really surprised about though is how he just never gave drifting a try. Anyway, now you know what happened to perhaps one of F1's most infamous and terrible drivers. Nikita's career was certainly fueled by controversy, poor decisions, and even worse racing etiquette. But there's no doubt his heart's set on being a racing driver for as long as he possibly can. Plus, I'm sure he'll always get to be the honorary spinning top of Formula 1. If you enjoyed this deep dive into what Mazepin is currently up to, please do consider subscribing. Also, I just have to say a massive thank you to the channel members who help support these videos. It really does help me out a lot, and it means a lot. Thank you, and goodbye!